The Separatists have blockaded the planet of Ryloth. Twi'lek freedom fighter Cham Syndulla works with General Imagundi to defend his people against the occupation, though they are running low on supplies. The Jedi Council contact Bail Organa and request that he try to convince the Toydarians to allow them to pass relief ships through their system, with Jar Jar having already gone ahead to Toydaria with the supplies. Dooku is informed of this and sends Trade Federation Senator Lot Dodd to Toydaria. Bail arrives and meets with Jar Jar. The pair talk with King Katuunko and plead the case of Ryloth's humanitarian crisis. Lot Dodd himself has arrived and butts in, stating Katuunko should think more clearly about this. Bail and Jar Jar wonder why Lot Dodd is there, with Katuunko informing the duo that Toydaria has a contract with the Trade Federation. Bail dismisses the Federation as being in bed with the Separatists, which Dodd denies. Dodd manipulates the situation by revealing the detail of Ryloth having a Separatist blockade, forcing Katuunko to discuss the matter with the other members of his council. On Ryloth, General Dai's forces are being overrun, and without reinforcements, they are hopeless. Further to this, Cham wants to leave, but is unable to due to environmental damage caused by the ongoing droid attack. Back on Toydaria, Katuunko has returned and decides to hear both sides' full detailed arguments for and against helping Ryloth. Bail has gotten the assistance of a holographic message from Ryloth Senator Ornfree Tar, who pleads his case. Dodd states that Bail is deceiving the Toydarians, showing that the blockade of the planet is because of the ground battle, stating that the Republic will just form a military base on Ryloth. The Separatist Senate will see Katuunko's actions as confirmation that he is no longer neutral. Dodd further states that the Trade Federation will then be open to attack from the Separatists, causing them to cease their current trade deal with Toydaria. The Toydarian Council reconvene to make a decision. Master Dai plans to use an LAAT as a bomb to cover up the Twi'lek's plan to flee. Katuunko's verdict is that Toydaria has to stay neutral to protect its people, though, in secret, he talks with Bail and Jar Jar about how the Twi'leks are just innocents caught in the crossfire of warring factions. Katuunko gives the senators permission to pass the relief aid already on the planet through his system, but they must make sure that it is not traceable back to the Toydarians. The Toydarians have set up a formal dinner, though Bail makes excuses to leave so he can secretly prepare the transports. Bail informs Jar Jar of this, with him deciding to put on a show to distract Lot Dodd. Master Dai and the clones have destroyed the LAAT, catching the attention of the Separatist forces. They fight them off for as long as possible, with all the clones fallen, including Captain Cary. Dai makes a final stand, where he gets to see the relief supplies delivered to the planet before being gunned down by the droids. Lot Dodd approaches Bail and Katuunko, angered that he's hearing reports of Republic ships having broken through Ryloth's blockade. However, he's unable to do anything or prove that it was anything to do with Toydaria. Dodd promises Bail that next time he will pay. Katuunko decides it's time that Toydaria reconsiders its neutrality, informing Bail that he is willing to meet with the Jedi to pursue this. Yoda has agreed to meet with King Katuunko on the neutral moon of Ragosa. Before Yoda arrives, however, Katuunko is approached by Asajj Ventress, who is there on behalf of Dooku, who speaks via hologram. Dooku queries why exactly he wants to side with the Jedi. As Yoda's ship approaches the Coral Moon, it is attacked by the Separatists. Yoda gets them to launch all escape pods, so they have a higher chance of survival. Yoda's pod has reached the surface. He talks with Katuunko over hologram. Yoda is challenged by Ventress. If he can defeat her droid forces, Katuunko can join the Republic. If not, then he could consider joining the Separatists instead. As Yoda and the clones begin their task, he informs them that they must surprise the enemy by not taking the direct route to their destination. Yoda and the clones notice the droids searching the coral forest. They agree to split up and ambush them. Yoda uses his small stature as a way to distract the droids, while the clones flank them from behind. Taking out the B-1s, the clones are suddenly attacked by some B-2 battle droids. Meanwhile, Yoda has gone on ahead and encounters another group of B-1s. He uses his force jumps against them, causing them to destroy each other. As the clones and Yoda regroup, they are pursued by the B-2 battle droids. Yoda focuses with the Force, lifts one of them up, and turns it around, which causes it to fire on its fellow droids. Hot off the heels of the B-2s come the droidicas, causing the clones to retreat while Yoda covers them. Some time has passed, with Yoda and the clones deciding to rest in a cave to regain their strength. Meanwhile, Ventress's droid forces search for them. The clones are quick to determine they've been bested and recommend that Yoda go on alone. But Yoda instead talks about the positives. He gets the clones to remove their helmets and reminds them that just because they look the same doesn't mean they are. They leave the cave and Yoda decides to greet the droid forces. He confuses them by initially sitting still and concentrating, before attacking them with his unique fighting style, single-handedly destroying multiple tanks with ease. Ventress, being informed of Yoda's upper hand, activates additional droidicas, bringing the clones back into the fight, with them using a rocket launcher to collapse part of the landscape, crushing the droids. Dooku talks with Katuunko, the latter confirming he will join the Republic. This leads to Dooku ordering Ventress to kill the Toydarian, but she is unable to when Yoda steps in, holding her sabers inches away from a killing blow. He overpowers Ventress, and instead of surrendering, she causes a distraction and flees. Katuunko officially sides with the Republic, granting them access to build their base in his system. Originally, this story arc was just a single standalone episode, with Ambush being the 8th overall Clone Wars episode produced, with the production code CW108. By the end of the second production season, George Lucas decided he wanted to revisit some of the earlier Clone Wars stories, including Ambush, and expand upon them, leading to a prequel episode called Supply Lines, which has a production code of CW224. Ambush was written by Stephen Melching and story edited by Henry Gilroy. Dave Bullock is credited as the episode's director. Catherine Winder produced this episode alongside the majority of production Season 1. Supply Lines was written by Stephen Melching and Eoghan Mahony, with Drew Z. Greenberg getting an additional supervising writer credit. Brian Kalin O'Connell directed this episode. Cary Silver has the top billing for producer, replacing Catherine Winder, who has an executive producer credit on all production Season 2 episodes, probably due to how far in advance these episodes would have been planned out. Ambush shared its release date with Rising Malevolence, being a double bill series premiere on October 3rd, 2008. Supply Lines was released as the third episode of Season 3 on September 24th, 2010. According to Henry Gilroy's interview in Star Wars Insider 103, the first 15 story ideas for the Clone Wars were ones that him and Filoni came up with and then pitched to George Lucas, who would greenlit them. If you count all separate stories from within production Season 1, that includes all 26 episodes. George Lucas would then go on to personally be the one who came up with the stories for all following production seasons. Filoni and Gilroy would create 1 to 2 page premises and then present it to George Lucas, who would give his input. If Lucas liked the idea, they'd develop it further, creating story outlines and then creating a script from that. George Lucas would review the scripts, and then once approved, it would be locked in for production and sent through the pipeline. Though, Henry Gilroy makes a point, just like he did in the InVision commentary for the Clone Wars movie, that these scripts, while locked for production, are by no means regarded as final. Lucas would use the later stages of production with his 3D previs storyboarding to refine the story, adding and removing elements, both big and small. Despite Gilroy and Filoni being the ones to come up with the first production season slate of stories, Gilroy still regards the show as George Lucas's. Gilroy was there to execute Lucas's vision. Great leaders inspire greatness in others. This wasn't always the Jedi fortune cookie for this episode. As an earlier iteration reads, great leadership comes in all sizes. Being CW108, and thus coming before CW118, the new Padawan, Ambush features the non-live orchestra version of the Clone Wars intro theme tune. The live orchestra version is present in the end credits, however. The episode originally contained a longer title, Ambush in the Outer Rim, as revealed by Henry Gilroy in the same Star Wars Insider 103 interview mentioned earlier. Ambush, while being the 8th production episode, was chosen to be released as the Season 1 premiere, and thus the first ever episode of the show itself to be released, with the production team thinking that it was a big, bold way to start off the show, with an episode focusing on Jedi Grandmaster Yoda, something they thought the audience had not really seen before. The episode, production-wise, is sandwiched in between Rising Malevolence and Shadow of Malevolence. This is represented with Ambush's newsreel, which contains clips from Rising Malevolence showing how Ambush was created after it. The newsreel also features other episodes produced beforehand, but airing afterwards, being CW105, Bombad Jedi, and CW106, Jewel of the Droids, as well as footage from the production episodes that form the Clone Wars movie, though its colour grading differs compared to that release, suggesting it was either changed for the movie release or for its use within this episode. Ambush wasn't always intended to be the premiere episode of the show, with it initially being planned to appear later. This most likely being the tentative version of Season 1 that included the 4 episodes adapted into the Clone Wars movie. Development 3D storyboarding of Ambush depicts a Christmas tree model, most likely placed there as a humorous gag for the production team while they worked on the episode. The footage also shows a slightly later stage of development compared to the one we're most familiar with the unfinished Clone Wars arc story reels, where the majority of visuals are still in their basic storyboard form, but parts of the main characters are fully rendered and have animations, such as Ventress's head and Yoda. However, Yoda lacks his cloak, and there is no lighting. Ventress's voice within this footage is the temp voices they created before having the actual cast record the dialogue. This is interesting, as later seasons would have the actual voice actors record the dialogue before they implemented the facial animations. Yoda's treatment of the clones as individuals is a similar way to how he would teach the younglings in the Jedi Temple. They wanted to also show a more fun side to Yoda that the prequels didn't get the chance to, showing him toying with the droids as this impish gremlin-esque creature. Clone Wars Yoda, compared to the previous CGI prequel trilogy Yoda, has bigger features to really emphasise the Clone Wars' stylistic art direction. Clone Trooper Jek, initially made his first appearance within this episode, but has since been retroactively established as one of the clones that Yoda kills on Kashyyyk during Order 66. Shock Trooper Fire, featured within this episode, would be one of the Coruscant Guard members who would try to hunt Yoda down after his Revenge of the Sith duel with Sidious inside the Senate. Ambush expands on the Toydarians after we saw Watto in The Phantom Menace, in a similar way to how Bombad Jedi expanded on the Rhodians, following on from Greedo in A New Hope. Due to the movies having limited time, the movies could only show one individual of a species. Killian Plunkett states that there is a trap that people might fall into of thinking that every individual of that species all look like that one individual character. Watto was used as a bit of inspiration due to being the original Toydarian, but he was only one member of the species, so they decided to differentiate the Toydarians by giving them facial hair variety, and Katuunko being given a bigger snout, to exemplify his status as their king. Toydarian culture is prideful of their stomach roundness. The more round, the more in shape they are established to be. Filoni compared Katuunko to the king of the Vulturemen from Flash Gordon. The B2 battle droid voice has a chance to shine in this episode when Yoda force lifts it, these droids being less common in a speaking role compared to their more humorous B1 counterparts. Ragosa was originally meant to have a more red colour palette, but this was changed after it was deemed too similar to the Abrogado system depicted in Rising Malevolence. Ragosa is yet another new celestial body created for the Clone Wars. By this point, Lucas had already done the quote easy, singular biome types, with Clone Wars having to be a bit more creative to keep it fresh. So, they decided to do a coral moon, with their backstory being that it was once like Camino with vast oceans, but that time has long passed, with it now being this dry coral wasteland. Russell Chong created a variety of different coral designs, while Filoni wanted there to be light rays piercing through them. The battle droids not having mouths meant that the sound design team could add to their humorous dialogue right up to the last minute, with the "but I just got promoted" line being one of those added late into production. That line is also not featured within the development footage included on the Blu-ray release. David Accord recorded sounds made by his cat for the baby Nibre. From a production standpoint, these baby Nibre would have been created first, and then the following production episode, CW109, Shadow of Malevolence, would depict the adult equivalent. The Republic frigate's targeting display is the same one featured within the Falcon, being of Corellian design. Fire's micro-binocular viewplate has infrared mode and regular mode as available toggle options listed in Aurebesh. When there's a will, there's a way. Supply Lines acts as a prequel to Ambush and the Ryloth arc, with its plot being a precursor to King Katuunko being willing to join the Republic. His neutrality is utilised by the Republic to sneak in supplies to a Trade Federation occupation of Ryloth, and this is the event that convinces him to arrange a meeting with Yoda. Katuunko's actions within the story ultimately lead to Dooku taking revenge against the Toydarian within a future episode, which unintentionally turns fatal for the king. This episode also suggests that the Ryloth occupation goes on for quite some time before the Republic are able to free the planet. Concept art suggests that at one point the Toydarian palace was to also be located on Ragosa, just like the setting in Ambush. Another depicts the palace on a more desert-esque world, more similar to Ryloth. General Dye's clone troopers have a similar colour scheme to Phil Squad from Lair of Grievous, though Supply Lines being produced over a season later shows a noticeable improvement in their designs. Supply Lines shows an increase in design variation for the Toydarians compared to what was shown within Ambush, showing a clear improvement with their animation tools between the two production episodes. Supply Lines marks production-wise the return of Ahmed Best in the role of Jar Jar Binks, after he was absent for the 3 episodes Jar Jar was featured in near the end of the first season. Though, as Supply Lines is a prequel to Ambush, those 3 episodes are still yet to chronologically happen. Dave Filoni suggests that Jar Jar is fully aware of his ability to be perceived as a goofball to gain an advantage, reminding me of the Darth Jar Jar theory, where it's stated that that is his goal all along for evil purposes, though here I think it's practically confirmed that he instead is using it for good. An alternate take of Jar Jar's dining room antics was 3D storyboarded, where he isn't standing on the table and is overall less impressive than the version depicted in the fully produced episode. Count Dooku's spinning meditation pad makes its first chronological appearance within this episode. However, production and release-wise, it would have first appeared in Dooku Captured. Jedi Master Imagundi is a clear pun on his purpose in the plot, as a Jedi character that is meant to die. Lot Dodd states that Newt Gunray's affection to the Separatists is not representative of the Trade Federation as a whole, with him stating that Gunray isn't associated with the Federation anymore, something we know is false, considering the episode has already established Dodd as a pawn of Dooku. Lot Dodd discusses the Separatist Senate, a place we'd become familiar with in future story arcs. The Toydarians' regular fluttering ability is represented throughout their furniture, such as with their floating dining table. A cost-effective animation model was used for Admiral Dow, with his body being a reuse of Yularen's, and his head being that of a male Mandalorian citizen. His hairpiece, however, is unique, and is a deliberate callback to the 1970s sideburn featuring British actor extras used in the original trilogy. Admiral Dow is voiced by Obi-Wan Kenobi voice actor James Arnold Taylor, though Dow has a noticeable French accent, not unlike the Twi'leks themselves. This suggests that perhaps Dow, while being human, could have grown up in the Ryloth system, thus having the same accent. Robin Atkins Downs, who voices Cham Syndulla, also voiced Imagundi. The Tantive 4 appears within Supply Lines, despite this being set before Revenge of the Sith, where Bail uses the Tantive 3 instead. This suggests that he has both ships in operation at the same time, instead of the Tantive 4 replacing the third one, as one could assume. In this edition of What Happened to That Glup Shitto, we have Lot Dodd. Lot Dodd makes his first chronological Clone Wars show appearance with Supply Lines, though his first appearance production-wise was Senate Spy, that was produced earlier in the second production season. His last appearance was in Crisis at the Heart, which, while is officially slated to take place during 19 BBY, due to that episode being moved to air in the Lost missions, actually, it makes more sense to take place in late 20 BBY, before the battle on Cato Nemoidia, seen in Season 5 Sabotage. The Poe Dameron comic series, issue number 20, has interestingly stated that Lot Dodd died during the Clone Wars, placing his death at some point during 19 BBY. I have a theory that perhaps his death is something that would have occurred during Padme's unfinished Clone Wars arc that was scripted for a full 8th season before the show's cancellation in March 2013. That story arc was to be the last big political arc of the show and would have followed up from the last story that Lot Dodd appeared in. Lot Dodd also became somewhat of a big opponent to Padme throughout the show, with her wanting to stop the fighting while he wanted to profit from it. Perhaps his death would have been featured within the unfinished story, and it could have been the catalyst for the Outer Rim sieges, with the Trade Federation publicly siding with the Separatists as seen in Revenge of the Sith, with Palpatine using their history of blockading planets to his advantage to make it clear that they are an enemy of the Republic. Supply Lines is a fun, more light-hearted episode, but it's not without its more serious themes, showing a Jedi die at the hands of the separatist Ryloth occupation. We follow Senator Bail Organa and Representative Jar Jar Binks, Jar Jar's trademark antics being used creatively in the plot to ultimately help the citizens of Ryloth gain supplies. Jar Jar's subtleties that were also present within Bombad Jedi are also present here, and they are a big part of his characterization that I enjoy, with the production team clearly having an attention to detail with this animation aspect. This episode shows us an example of how both sides of this war will try and utilize neutral territory to gain an upper hand. The whole neutrality topic will become much more of a focus within the Clone Wars' ongoing Mandalore story, which I look forward to covering as I reach those story arcs. Lot Dodd, while clearly working with the Separatists, states that the Republic will form a military base on Ryloth, which ultimately does come to pass, with the Republic not leaving Ryloth, with them still being there by the formation of the Empire. It's a shame that the Neimoidian aide accompanying Lot Dodd at the dinner doesn't have a name. It's nice to see a Neimoidian be happy for a change, not just the ones who are directly profiting off of the war. Captain Keli having armour that looks like Rex's, but has reddy brown markings, reminds me of how Rex was initially planned to be Clone Alpha, who himself had red markings. Lot Dodd stating how the Senate takes years to decide anything is an interesting thing to think about. While here it's portrayed as him being outsmarted by Bail and Jar Jar, I don't doubt that there is truth to that claim, especially by the time of the unfinished Padme arc, where the Republic was established as essentially gridlocked and unable to function due to how much power Palpatine himself had amassed by that point. It can also be said that this is due to the fact that none of the senators can seem to agree on anything. The ending of this episode has an interesting visual in the background where it establishes that the platform the characters are on is rotating, considering the tower behind them is moving around. I like how this episode retroactively connects the singular isolated ambush to the big 3-part Ryloth arc from Season 1. With Ambush predating that arc creation-wise, they weren't able to make that connection originally, which, considering George Lucas would have pitched Supply Lines, unlike Ambush, it suggests it was his decision to connect the two initially separate stories together. Weirdly, I have a false memory of Imagundi appearing in one of the actual Season 1 Ryloth arc episodes, which I attribute to the fact that I would watch a lot of reruns of the Clone Wars episodes back when I first watched this show on Cartoon Network. Ambush shows us the first Jedi showcase that Season 1 of the Clone Wars had to offer, with the highest member of the Jedi Order himself, Yoda. The earlier iteration of the fortune cookie being a direct nod to how Yoda's small stature could lead to people underestimating him makes it a shame that it was replaced. It's funny how the droids blame their programming for the plot device of Yoda's escape pod having to survive the ambush. I like how we get a brief sequence of Yoda admiring Ragosa's unique landscape, stating how amazing the universe is. He has this love and curiosity for the small things in life that the other younger characters don't. This episode interestingly has the droids call Ventress Supreme Leader, and is the only one where they do so. This retroactively makes me think of Snoke, considering the sequel trilogy gave him that same title, and can lead to a joke that Ventress is Snoke's real identity, with jokes like this being very prevalent back when The Force Awakens was new. You can definitely tell why they called this episode Ambush, considering both sides of the conflict ambush each other within the episode. Initially, Yoda and his fleet get ambushed, and later on, they return the favour and ambush the droid forces, searching for them on the moon. It's humorous when Ventress says that Yoda won't elude her for long, and then the episode just cuts to a sunset, showing a significant amount of time has passed. We yet again get more examples of how the Jedi treat the clone troopers as unique individuals, Yoda telling us that they are all different and unique within the Force. This pretty much being the theme of the show's early seasons, being a focus on how the Jedi promote the individuality of the clones. I enjoy getting to see Yoda's distinctive fighting style within this episode. It gets to the point where it's clear he's not even breaking a sweat. He's actively having fun toying with the droids. It reminds me of Yoda's inclusion in the unfinished Kashyyyk arc with the Bad Batch, and how Wrecker would no doubt be amazed to see Yoda in action. Hopefully one day, Lucasfilm will finish it. That arc would have also potentially have Yoda and his wholesome speeches as the driving force that brings the Wookiees, clones, and Clone Force 99 members together. Ambush gives us a very brief interaction between former Master and Padawan with Yoda and Dooku. It's a shame that they never got to interact much within the show, though I think they could have done within the unfinished Sith Shrine arc, considering both seem to be quite important to that story. We also get a brief interaction with Yoda and Ventress, which reminds me of the Saving Voss arc, where she's in the Jedi Temple, bowing to him. She has a level of respect for Yoda in that unfinished story, showing she's grown a lot from her time as Dooku's apprentice, where she's more naive. She's much more matured by the time of her bounty hunting days. Ambush as a whole gives us a lighter side to Yoda, which I find incredibly enjoyable and wholesome. In a way, it marries his more calm and collective self seen in the prequel trilogy with the more impish traits he had within The Empire Strikes Back. It is tragic how Yoda kills Clone Trooper Jek within Revenge of the Sith, after knowing the context of this episode. Overall, while I do enjoy quite a few aspects of this story arc, I do think it gets quite lost in the crowd when it comes to the show as a whole, but as always, I'd like to give each of these stories the focus and isolation they deserve. I now have an active channel membership available. This will grant you exclusive perks like emojis in the comments, usernames listed in my outros, and updates to what's coming next posted exclusively for members in the community tab. But the best feature is you get 5 days early access to new videos, and you will be supporting me at the same time. To find out more, you can click the join button on my channel page. Thank you to anyone who considers becoming a channel member. Thank you for watching. Please see the video description below for interesting links, sources, and credits. My current goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and comment. Until the next time, goodbye.